Hello and welcome to the Educational Corner. Yay! Today we're looking at some two key terms regarding type or typography because they are very useful and makes things easier for you and me. Now the first thing to talk about is the difference between font and typeface. Now they're very similar in today's world with the use of computers and the digital blah blah blah. However, they actually mean different things. So let's take an example of an album like this. It's a fantastic album. Fantastic choice, Irvin, with great taste in music. You have the name of the album and then you have the songs. They are different. So each song sits within the album and can be considered the same body of work. However, the song itself is its own thing. And the same thing works with typefaces and fonts. For example, this and this are both Times New Roman and they're different sizes, and so they're different fonts. However, the typeface, aka Times New Roman, is the same. Pretty easy, right? We mostly use fonts because we deal with things like Word or Docs, and what we're dealing with is a specific font. Whereas a graphic designer will often use a typeface because that accounts for all its uses and all its different fonts within a project, for example. And so the next thing we're going to look at is the difference between a serif and a sans-serif, or, as it should be said, a sans-serif. Now you may be thinking, why? Well, it's because sans is technically French, and it means without. So it's without a serif. So the next question is, what the fuck is a serif? Well, have a look at these two A's. You may notice there's a slight difference. You may notice there's a slight difference in the A's. Have a look. This curly bit here doesn't exist in this A, and this is what we call a serif. So what are the point of serifs? Well, firstly, look at this body of text. If you notice, the serifs help to create lines in the text like this. And doing so, it helps your eye follow along and makes serifs really useful in books. And so you'll notice if you're reading a book, it's almost guaranteed to have a serif font. You might be thinking, where do serifs come from? Well, people often attribute it to the Romans because when they used to carve letters with the chisel would leave a little flick at the end due to the nature of its shape. And this went on to be serifs. It's not confirmed, but that's the kind of general consensus as to where the fuck these motherfuckers came from. Some famous serifs you might know are Times New Roman, Baskerville, Garamond, and Georgia. Sans-serifs were developed later on for different reasons, but mainly for eye-catchness and to be used on the digital media. You may recognize the likes of Helvetica, Arial, Futura, but we'll talk about the history another time on another Educational Corner. So there you have it. Type. It's easy. Join us next week where we learn about something else. And until then, cool man. Bye.